Rylan Corbin had a cracked rib and a dislocated shoulder when he really laughed for the first time in front of the alien scientists. The sterile chamber reeked faintly of disinfectants and something metallic. Its walls were lined with panels of softly pulsing blue light, and overhead, a translucent dome filtered in the planet's third sun. Rylan sat on the edge of a padded examination platform, shirtless, sweat beading on his brow, and one arm bound tightly across his chest in a crude sling the aliens had attempted based on anatomical diagrams. Dr. Nyrek, the lead scientist conducting the study, stood nearby. He was tall, fluid in motion, with a smooth, metallic green carapace that flexed as he adjusted the data pad in his hand. His 4 eyes blinked out of sync as he reviewed the most recent readings from the sensory implants they'd embedded in Rylan's nervous system. "You are in measurable distress," Nyrek said, "yet you emitted the audible pattern associated with human amusement." Rylan wheezed, clutching his side. "Yeah, sorry. My buddy back home used to say I looked like a busted accordion when I got hurt. Just remembered that." That. Memory elicited humor during your injury? No, not the memory. The fact that I look like it now. You guys don't have accordions. Nyrek turned to his assistant, a shorter, slate-colored being named Resso, who had spent the last 6 months cataloging human expressions. "Do we possess images of this? Accordion?" Resso tapped at his handheld. "It appears to be a musical device that compresses and expands, often used in conjunction with polka." Nyrek turned back to Rylan. "You are likening your current physical form damaged and impaired to a musical instrument." "Yeah," Rylan said, grinning through gritted teeth. "That's the joke." Nyrek's gaze lingered on him. "Illogical. Welcome to humanity." Rylan hadn't volunteered for the study. He'd been part of an engineering crew sent to assist with terraforming on Threxel 2, a planet the Galactic Scientific Union had designated as a potential site for joint colonization. 2 weeks into the assignment, a miscalculation in seismic load caused a gravity stabilizer to collapse. Rylan had been on the upper scaffolding when it buckled. He remembered the fall. 30 feet. Enough time to think, this is going to be really bad, and then black. When he woke up in the Union's medical facility, he was in the custody of the alien research team. The incident had apparently triggered a rare opportunity, an unintentional but valuable case study in human reaction to trauma. The first few days were a haze of painkillers and monitoring. Not once did Rylan laugh. He barely talked. But after regaining some mobility, the absurdity of his situation began to settle in, and with it, his old defense mechanism. Humor. He didn't expect it to draw so much attention. "You vocalized again during the application of the osteo-regeneration splint," Resso said later that afternoon, reviewing footage. "You were being treated for severe musculoskeletal damage, yet you produced laughter." "I was joking with the nurse," Rylan said. "She said the splint would pinch, and I said, just like my Aunt Me's hugs, then I laughed because, well, I thought it was funny." Nyrek stared at the screen. "You consistently associate physical suffering with amusement. This is not a cultural requirement, correct? Definitely not required. Just some of us cope that way. That is illogical. Pain is a warning signal, a deterrent." Rylan shifted carefully on the examination table, wincing. "Yeah, well, sometimes when you've got no choice but to hurt, you find ways to take the edge off." The next week, they intensified the tests. Not in a malicious way, but in the clinical, detached fashion of scientists who knew their subject couldn't be replicated easily. They cycled Rylan through a range of recovery therapies, each monitored closely. Neuromuscular stim, bone knitting, tendon realignment. Every time his readings spiked with discomfort, they were ready. Cameras, probes, translations of his every word. During a particularly painful tendon adjustment, Rylan let out a yelp followed by an involuntary snort of laughter. "Why again?" Nyrek demanded. "Explain." "I don't know," Rylan gasped. "It just hurt so bad it looped around and tickled something stupid in my brain." Nyrek turned to Resso. Run comparative data on other human subjects. We have only archived footage. No real-time injuries. Then request volunteers, unlikely to obtain consent. Then we continue with this one, Rylan groaned. I'm not a lab rat. You are a unique case, Nyrek said. You are surviving with significant tissue trauma and continue to exhibit contradictory emotional expressions. A week later, Nyrek arranged for a controlled test involving mild nociceptive stimuli pressurized bands designed to simulate blunt force impacts without causing lasting harm. Rylan agreed reluctantly after they promised to share the data with the Earth Med Alliance. He was fitted with a suit that delivered short bursts of pressure across targeted muscle groups. The first jolt hit his thigh. He grunted. The second hit his side. He flinched. The third, directly over his healing rib, sent a sharp lance of pain through his torso, and he burst out laughing. Stop, 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 he yelled, breathless. Oh my God, that killed. You are amused, Nyrek said. No, I'm in agony. My brain's short-circuiting. Resso studied the readouts. Cortisol levels elevated, heart rate spiked, laughter sustained for 8 seconds. I felt like someone kicked me with a steel boot, Rylan gasped, still chuckling between shallow breaths. Why did I laugh? I don't even know. It just happened. They paused that test, but the questions only compounded. The alien scientists began interviewing other humans stationed on Threxel 2. A maintenance technician named Sophia Nellies described laughing uncontrollably after slamming her hand in a pressure seal. I think it was because it was so stupid, she told them. Like, I knew better, but it still happened, and it hurt like hell, but also it was so ridiculous. Another worker, a botanist named Theo, recounted breaking his toe on a crate and laughing while hopping on one leg. It's not that it wasn't painful, he explained. It's just, you run out of reactions sometimes. The aliens were bewildered. It is a paradox, Nyrek said during one of the internal research meetings. Pain typically signals danger, yet these humans respond with amusement. It does not deter. It appears to complicate their decision-making. Rylan, now walking with a limp and undergoing daily physical therapy, asked, maybe it doesn't complicate us. Maybe it's how we cope when there's nothing left to fix in the moment. Resso tilted his head. You mean laughter is not a sign of dismissal, but endurance? Exactly, Rylan said. Think of it like a pressure valve. You get hurt, you know it sucks, but instead of panicking or shutting down, you laugh. It's not joy, it's survival. The room fell quiet. In the following weeks, the tests changed. Less focus on physical endurance, more on psychological resilience. Rylan was asked to watch simulations, injury scenarios, accidents, even historical footage from Earth. Sometimes he laughed, sometimes he winced, sometimes he did both. They concluded the study 3 months later. By then, Rylan's shoulder had mostly healed. He'd regained full mobility, though the rib still ached during heavy exertion. He was cleared for light duty and allowed to return to his team. Nyrek visited before his departure. You have altered our understanding of pain response, he said. Your reactions do not match your biology. That's humanity for you, Rylan replied, zipping up his flight jacket with a grunt. We may request further collaboration. Maybe next time without the falling scaffolds. Nyrek inclined his head and extended a narrow limb. Rylan shook it. You still think laughter is illogical? He asked. Nyrek hesitated. It is not predictable, but perhaps it is functional. Rylan smiled. Close enough. 3 weeks after Rylan left the research facility, a delegation from the Galactic Scientific Union requested a meeting not with Earth's diplomats or high-ranking officials, but with the terraforming crew on Threxel 2. Specifically, the humans who had been observed under duress. The request was unusual but not refused. The Union had been unusually polite about it, even allowing the humans to select the meeting site. They chose the auxiliary hangar, mostly because it had folding chairs, an unbroken coffee machine, and a roof that didn't hum at frequencies that made your teeth itch. The aliens arrived on foot. Nyrek led them, flanked by two new observers draped in dark red biofilm robes that shimmered with embedded data nodes. Rylan stood near the back, his arm in a compression sleeve that helped with circulation, watching as Sophia Nellies arranged a tray of synthetic donuts on a collapsible table with the solemn care of a peace offering. Theo leaned against a crate, arms crossed. "Think they're here to apologize. They're here to ask more questions," Rylan muttered. "They always want more data." Nyrek addressed the group without preamble. "We have encountered an inconsistency. Human behavior during environmental stress does not align with projections. We seek clarification." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "You came all the way out here to tell us we don't make sense again." "Not all of you," replied one of the new observers. Its voice was modulated through a layered harmonic filter that made every word sound like it had been sung backward, then reversed again. "Only the ones who persist beyond rational tolerance." "That's everyone on this rock," Theo said. "Have you looked around?" Nyrek gestured to Rylan. "We observed anomalous coping patterns in Subject Corbin. Since his release, 5 additional human workers have sustained injuries under similarly hazardous conditions. 3 responded with vocal amusement, 2 with verbal absurdity. 1 attempted to name their contusion. I called it Grape Jr., Sophia said, pointing at a fading bruise on her shin. It had a little sibling, but that one faded quicker. The aliens didn't respond. Nyrek turned back to Rylan. We require further access. Controlled exposure to psychological stressors. No physical harm, observational only. You want us to freak out while you take notes? Rylan asked, precisely. Theo pushed off the crate. You know, back home they call this reality television. We just need a confessional booth and a subscription fee. No subscription, Rylan said. But I want hazard pay. Agreed, said Nyrek instantly to everyone's surprise. Plus 1 recreational hour per observation cycle. That's new, Sophia said. We have installed a virtual environment designed for human leisure. You may select from 29 Earth-based simulations. Theo scratched his jaw. Do any of them have snow? Yes. One features a phenomenon called sledding. Sophia grinned. We're in. The first observation session occurred 2 days later in an underground simulation chamber the aliens constructed beneath the East Ridge. It looked like a combination of a museum exhibit and a minimalist performance stage. There were no visible cameras, but the walls were embedded with pulsing bio-optic sensors that tracked every twitch of muscle and dilation of pupils. Rylan, Sophia, and Theo were the first group to enter. They were each instructed to wear lightweight neural bands that monitored brain activity and emotional flux. A translucent panel descended from the ceiling and displayed a shifting landscape: gray skies, distant thunder, the distinct outline of a deteriorating Earth apartment block with flickering lights. What is this? Sophia asked. This is a reconstruction, said the second observer, who had introduced itself as Velik. Based on archived footage labeled Bad Neighborhood circa 2060, you are to navigate it. Why? Rylan said, to measure your emotional responses in an unstable environment. A door opened with a hiss. Cold air poured in. The 3 humans stepped inside. The hallway smelled of damp concrete and old insulation. A ceiling panel flickered overhead. Somewhere down the corridor, a voice muttered angrily in a language none of them recognized. A door slammed. Sophia whispered, "Okay, this is way too familiar." Theo tapped the wall. "That's real mold." "They grew mold for this." Rylan pointed at a broken elevator shaft. "I think we're supposed to go up." They climbed 5 flights of crumbling stairs, each one groaning under their weight. At the top, a mechanical dog the size of a bicycle lunged out of a doorway, barking in glitchy stutters. Sophia jumped, then laughed. That's just like the neighbor's security bot when I was a kid. It used to chase pigeons and scream trespasser at squirrels. Theo bent down and offered the fake animal his hand. It sniffed, then rolled over and shut down. A voice echoed from nowhere. Emotional state elevated, heart rate increased, Laughter detected. Sophia cupped her hands. You're welcome. The next room simulated a power outage during a thunderstorm. The lights died suddenly and a recorded thunderclap rattled the windows. Rylan tripped over a cable and hit his shin on a radiator. He cursed, then chuckled. You okay? Theo asked. I think Grape Jr. Just had a cousin. The door to the next chamber didn't open. Instead, the wall to their left began to lower, revealing a slow, rising flood of water. Nah, Sophia said, backing up. You didn't say anything about drowning scenarios. Simulated only, Velek's voice responded. Still a hard no. Rylan reached for the emergency bar on the side of the wall. Let's see if the panic exits work. They did, but only after 5 seconds of delay, which Velek later explained was part of the test. Back in the observation center, Nyrek reviewed the data with narrowed eyes. Subject Corbin sustained minor blunt trauma. Subject Nellie's exhibited startle reflex followed by humor. Subject Theo engaged in bonding behavior with simulation artifact. We're not mice in a maze, Sophia said, drying her boots with a towel. If you want to know how we survive stress, try giving us something real to worry about. That was just set dressing. Agreed, Theo said. You want data, put us somewhere we don't know is fake. Unethical, Nyrek replied. Then you'll never understand us, Rylan said, tossing the neural band onto the table. 3 days later, without announcement, the simulation chamber changed. The humans entered expecting another artificial scenario. Instead, the lights dimmed and the floor dropped several inches. A low-frequency vibration pulsed through the air. What now? Sophia asked. A klaxon blared overhead. The walls shifted, revealing a control center with blinking red alerts. System failure, a synthetic voice declared. Oxygen regulation compromised. Evacuate immediately. The humans froze. Is this the simulation? Theo asked. Rylan looked at the oxygen meter on the wall. It was dropping. He ran to the console. That's not a program, that's a real leak. Sophia hit the intercom. Velek, Nyrek, you seeing this? No answer. Theo pulled open the emergency kit and yanked out respirator masks. We've got maybe 5 minutes. Rylan scanned the panel. Looks like a pressure valve failed. If we reroute the flow through the secondary intake, we can stabilize it. Which one's the intake? Sophia shouted, already pulling off the panel cover. The one that looks like a spider's intestines. That's both of them. Then pick the angrier one. They worked fast, hands moving without hesitation. Theo held wires together while Rylan bypassed the conduit. Sophia jammed a stabilizer rod into the valve casing. The oxygen levels stopped falling. You did it, Theo said, exhaling into his mask. The intercom crackled. Test complete. Sophia ripped off the mask. You maniacs, you said unpredictability was necessary, Velek replied. We ensured you could not distinguish simulation from reality. That wasn't a test, Rylan growled. That was sabotage. The environment was fully controlled, no actual risk of suffocation. You made us think we were going to die. And your response was to act, to cooperate, to improvise. You did not panic, you did not freeze. Rylan looked around, his hands were still shaking. You better hope this data was worth it. It was, Nyrek said, entering from a concealed door. Today we saw the core of your species. You adapt not because you are prepared, but because you assume you must. Theo sat hard on the floor. That's the most backhanded compliment I've ever heard. Not intended as such, Nyrek said. We admire it. Deeply? Later, in the rec wing, the 3 humans sat in a virtual snowfield, drinking simulated hot chocolate, Sophia said. You think they'll ever understand that we don't do it for the drama? Rylan shook his head. They'll keep poking us until we break or surprise them again. Theo raised his cup. Here's to surprise then. And for once, the snow fell without a hidden purpose. 3 days after the simulated oxygen failure, the humans declined further participation in any experiment that didn't involve full transparency. The alien delegation, to their credit, agreed without protest. They even offered an apology. delivered not in words but through an elaborate gift, a pressure-adjustable massaging floor mat and a crate of rare Earth snacks synthesized from archival data. The mat was a hit. The snacks were less successful. No one was sure how they'd managed to mess up peanut butter. At midday, Sophia found herself crouched under a service conduit near the hangar's hydraulic lift system, elbow deep in coolant lines. Theo lay flat on his back nearby, guiding her with a torch and a patchwork tablet held together with thermal tape. Rylan paced a few feet away, trying not to wince as he rotated his arm in a slow arc. "It's catching again," he muttered. "You overdid it yesterday," Theo said without looking up. "You lifted that storage drone like it was a gym competition. It was stuck. I didn't want to wait. Then don't complain when your shoulder sounds like gravel in a blender." "I wasn't complaining," Rylan said. "I was narrating." "For the sake of transparency." Sophia grunted as a clamp snapped into place. "Got it. Try the pressure again." Theo tapped the console. The coolant hissed through the line. A faint blue glow lit the pipe. The lift vibrated once, then settled into a low hum. "Fixed," Sophia said, rolling onto her back. "That's the third one this week." "They're aging faster than expected," Theo said. "Gravity fluctuations must be interfering with the alignment protocols." "They weren't designed for triple sun exposure either," Rylan added. "Thermal stress is warping the outer frame. We'll need to re-insulate before next quarter." At that moment, the hangar door opened with a pneumatic sigh. Velek entered, flanked by a pair of floating data orbs that hovered like curious insects. "We have completed analysis," Velek announced. "Your collective response to the previous engagement has altered our long-term modeling." Sophia sat up. "You mean the time you tricked us into thinking we'd suffocate?" "The time you adapted under falsified crisis parameters," Velek corrected. "We now believe your species exhibits an unquantifiable factor that resists predictive modeling. We have designated it as variable H." "H for human?" Rylan asked, brushing coolant off his sleeves. "Incorrect. H for havoc." Theo stood, brushing dust from his overalls. "That's flattering." "Acknowledgement of chaos is not intended as insult," Velek said. "Your capacity to improvise under duress destabilizes standard behavioral matrices. It is both inefficient and paradoxically effective." "We call that winging it," Sophia said. Rylan crossed his arms. "So what now? More simulations, more tests?" "No," Velek replied. "We believe further study would yield diminishing returns. You are not consistent enough for controlled replication." "Then we're done?" Theo asked. "Not entirely. We request assistance in recalibrating our predictive models." "Your insights may inform future cooperative protocols." "You want us to help you make sense of ourselves?" Sophia asked. "Correct." Later that day, the trio was escorted to the Union's Computational Archive Dome, a structure that resembled a pearl fractured by geometry. Inside, holographic projectors mapped out behavioral graphs and decision trees in sprawling lattices of light and color. The aliens had compiled centuries of human data from emergency response logs to unscripted interviews during wartime, all indexed by stress level and response type. "Where did you get all of this?" Rylan asked, staring at a projection of what looked like a subway brawl in slow motion. "Public data repositories," Velek replied. "Some segments were recovered from defunct satellites orbiting your homeworld." Theo leaned close to a sequence showing a flood rescue. "You're trying to find patterns in this?" "We were," Nyrek said, emerging from behind a projection of a burning oil rig. "Until we concluded the pattern was unpredictability itself." Sophia stepped back from a simulation of a collapsing stage rig. "What do you need us to do?" "Identify what made each response viable," Velek said. "Not the mechanics, the instinct." They spent the next 2 days reviewing footage. The aliens provided neural feedback chairs that allowed them to interface directly with annotated sequences. Each video played with emotional overlays: fear, urgency, resolve mapped in waves of color and rhythm. Rylan pointed out when someone chose instinct over training. Sophia explained how improvisation sometimes came from a background in unrelated skills. Theo focused on group dynamics, identifying when decisions were made through unspoken consensus. By the fourth day, the model began shifting. The projections no longer sought a single optimal path. Instead, they displayed clusters of possible responses, each weighted by likelihood, not value. The aliens had started accounting for intuition. "You've turned chaos into a feature," Rylan said. "No," Nyrek replied. "We have accepted that chaos is your default state." They returned to the hangar by evening. The sun, only one this time, cast long shadows across the metal floor. A soft wind rolled in from the western ridge, carrying the scent of iron-rich dust and something faintly floral from the terraforming gardens. Sophia sat on the edge of a crate, rubbing her aching wrist. "Feels weird to be done." Theo handed her a cold compress from the med kit. "We taught aliens how to guess better. That's probably worth a few vacation days." Rylan sat nearby, flexing his shoulder slowly. "They're not gonna stop poking at us, just with better tools now." "Maybe that's not bad," Sophia said. "If they understand us better, they might stop trying to fix us." "They never tried to fix us," Theo said, "just make sense of us." "That's worse, somehow," Rylan muttered. A soft chime echoed from the intercom. Velik's voice followed. "The Union has concluded the study. Your participation has fulfilled all parameters. You may return to previous assignments without further observation." "Thanks for the trauma," Sophia called out. Velik didn't respond. They spent the rest of the evening repairing the last of the drone scaffolding. The light turned amber as the sun dipped lower, casting the hangar in a warm, temporary glow. No alarms sounded, no simulations triggered, no strange requests interrupted. At nightfall, they gathered around the auxiliary fire pit outside the habitat dome. The flames were synthetic, flickering over a mineral reactive base, but the warmth was real. Theo roasted a protein skewer. Sophia sipped from a mug of something that claimed to be cider. Rylan stretched out on a folded tarp, his arm finally relaxed. "You think they'll ever really get it?" Sophia asked, watching sparks drift upward. "They don't have to," Rylan said. "They just have to stop being scared of it." Theo rotated his skewer. "They weren't scared, just confused." "Same thing sometimes," Rylan said. The fire crackled. The wind shifted. Overhead, the stars emerged unfamiliar constellations in a foreign sky. Sophia smiled faintly. "Still weird that we're the ones being studied." Theo nodded. "We always assumed we'd be the ones doing the studying." Rylan sat up, gazing at the stars. "Maybe that's the joke." "What is?" "That we spend centuries looking for something greater than us, and when we find it, turns out we're the ones who don't make sense." No one replied. The fire burned lower. Eventually they turned in for the night. No alarms, no tests, just sleep. In the computational dome, the updated model finished rendering. A final tag blinked at the bottom of the display. Human variable H, adaptive resilience through absurdity. The system filed it under, unresolvable, accept as is.